let's start from that point. Let's acknowledge that hateful speech exists, and it can be hurtful, and it can do damage. But then the alternative is a state that might, in the future, be completely unscrupulous, that is going to decide for you what you can say, and those are the things that we have to tackle. And the other key thing is that no one knows how to define hate speech. UNESCO, the European Court of Human Rights, they've all agreed there's no way to define hate speech. Every European country that has hate speech laws has different hate speech laws, different definitions, subjective, abstract concepts such as hate, such as offence, such as perception. And these are on the statute books, and you don't want this stuff on the statute books because it's all very well. I mean, I know we talked about the SNP and their hate crime bill. The defence I'm always running into is people are saying, yes, okay, technically someone could be arrested and imprisoned for saying an offensive joke, technically, yes, but no one in their right mind, no jury, no judge is going to, we've got common sense, it's okay. Well, that's so myopic. I mean, because you don't know who's going to be in charge in 10 years' time. You don't know who that judge is going to be. How can you possibly just...
You can be certain that someone will be in charge that doesn't approve of you and that you don't approve of. That will certainly happen.
You don't want vague wording on the statute books. It's going to be exploited at some point, even if it's not today. There's absolutely no way that you can guarantee it against the future abuses of that. And it is, as you say, it's a certainty. So I think it's actually one of the most important arguments that we should make, and that we need to do. Free speech needs to be defended in every successive generation. It's not something that you know this, you get it and then it's there forever. No, that's not true. But there's something about human nature, there's something about people in power, there's something about the way that we are, that it will collapse. It's an edifice that is not secure at any given time. But it's hard. It's that thing of being smeared. The risk is you're going to be smeared, you're going to be associated with the worst possible kinds of people, because of course it's only really controversial speech that ever requires protection, and people are going to say, well, then you must support what these awful people are saying, and it's hard to make the case, but it's a case that nonetheless has to be made, and particularly by politicians. I've been incredibly disappointed by the way in which politicians in this country have not made any kind of effort to if anything, as from what I can see, there are moves even in the English Parliament to push through further hate speech laws. We should be repealing them, not pushing for them. But no one wants to have the argument. No one wants to be tainted.
Yeah, well, they get identified one by one and taken out. That's what happens.
Well, you get put on a list. This is it. The identitarian left, if that's what we're going to call them. I don't know what to call them. That's the problem. Is they're very clever about evading even a label. But they like making their lists. They like observing and saying, you are problematic. You have sinned. And now they have an electronic trail. These are the people that absolutely love going through all of your old tweets and messages and anything they can find. And of course the point about that is you can do that to anyone. There is no one alive who, if you had complete unfettered access to everything they've ever written online or in their emails or text messages, that you couldn't construct a case to damn someone.
That's actually one of the things that's more or less saved me.
Is that right?
Well, by the time I made my political statement, which was a philosophical statement or even a spiritual statement, not a political statement, I already had 200 hours of lectures online, and so essentially everything I'd ever said to students was recorded, and it wasn't possible to pull out a smoking pistol. So
this was very smart. And also, but this is why it's also astonishing. I find it unendingly astonishing the way you are mischaracterized, because it's all there. Everything you think is out in the open. You've been very, very, very clear and explicit about your point of view. And so when they try and demonize you and turn you into this thing, people can check and they'll realize that I think what they're doing is they're relying on the reputational damage being a kind of barrier to people even investigating who you really are.
Yeah, well, to some degree that works, but it doesn't really work, because what generally happens is that, for every person who wouldn't open a lecture because of my reputation, there's 3 or 4 who do because they're curious, and then it has an even more perverse effect on, in some cases, on the true believers, because they're primed to find anything I said offensive, but that doesn't happen. Or maybe they even find it useful, and then that's not good at all. It's like, well, he's
Isn't that
demonized.
interesting when you meet the people, when you get into conversation with people and you can see that you're not what they thought you were, and they don't know quite what to do with that. You know, and that to me is why another reason why we need more speech, not less. We need to have the conversations so that people can be disabused of the fantasies that they've been wallowing in. You know, but I do very much enjoy that when people expect one thing and then they actually speak to me and they don't see that there's no evidence of it because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to watch that unfold in the public domain too. I mentioned those two interviews, the Channel 4 interview that's been viral and the interview by Helen Lewis at GQ, and those interviews basically consist of nothing but the attempt by the interlocutor to have a conversation with the person that exists in their imagination,
right?
Which bears almost no relationship to me at all. That was particularly the case with Kathy Newman, and it was less so with Helen Lewis, but that was still essentially the issue.
It's quite reassuring, though, isn't it, that once it's out there, people can see through it. You know,
it's very reassuring. Isn't what saved me, and this has given me an endless supply of hope, I would say, is that all I've ever had to do is just show everything. It's like, here's the situation, no edits, like this is what happened, and every time so far, you know, I haven't been fatally damaged.
I mean, one of the things I've learned most, I think, since Titania kicked off and it became a known thing, is I've learned simply never to trust the perception of someone as constructed in the media or online, or you know, it's never the same person. I've ended up meeting. You know, coming from the background I did, most of my friends were always on the left. I didn't really know conservative people, and now I have a lot of friends who are conservatives. You know, and they're just not this villain that they were made out to be. And even some famous conservatives who people have said they're absolute monsters, they're evil, they want to eat babies, basically, or the equivalent. You know, and you get to know them and you realise, oh my goodness, the perception is so far removed from the reality that even I once had bought into it myself, because everyone's telling you this.
You know, the same thing. I've certainly had that experience repeatedly.
I never trust it now. Whenever I hear the way people talk about people online, I never trust it unless I know someone personally. I'm never going to trust that again. I think it's an important lesson for me.
So what's next for you? And also, how do you make a living? You can't make a living as Titania McGrath. I mean, you're locked down still, so it's got to be hard being a comedian.
Right. So, I mean, well, comedy came to an end. I mean, I did a stand-up comedy tour in 2019. Early 2019, and that was really the last big thing I did, because as soon as I was about to do some more live performances, the lockdown came, and it's the same. You know, I'm not complaining, because absolutely every live performer has the identical experience. We've all, you know, I'm not in a position to complain. It's a very good question. I like it because it's also very direct. How do I make my money? Well, I write articles for various publications. There's the Titania books have kept me going. I obviously used to work on the Jonathan Pye character. We had a couple of television shows and live tours. Those were particularly lucrative. And for a long time, I did just make my money as a stand-up comic. So literally just the money I would make from the circuit. Now I've just got a job with. Well, it's you know, I gave up being a full-time teacher for this, and I was on a regular wage. It was a good salary, and I left it at great risk, you know, because I don't come from a wealthy family. I don't have the means to support myself without this kind of stuff. So I actually went part-time first and was on the stand-up circuit, and then I started earning enough from stand-up to get by, and so I went full-time stand-up. But I was genuinely struggling.
Something I give a lot of thought to about showing people the system and trying to explain what it is I've found so far is the fear factor of it all. And running back to our original programs in order to avoid the scare tactic of what you're going to be seeing. And I try to reassure you that there's nothing to be fearful about or afraid of, even though it's going to go against everything we've ever been told, taught, thought, heard, learned, programmed. It will go against everything because you have to look and read between the lines, as I always try to say. It's the easiest way I can explain it. Of all the lies, in order to see, oh, I see what they meant by all these lies. They do have little bits of pieces of truth in them. So one of the things about since finding the system is realizing that we could all use the true creator's work, the true creator's energy. Now we all already know that this is a shared energy. We're all pretty comfortable with that due to these religions that I'm ranking out, the earlier religions of God, not the recent ones of outer space, space alien gods, and all that nonsense. Um, but all the old nonsense that I'm always picking on. So there are always little bits and pieces of truth, just like there's bits and pieces of truth in the science and the math, right? But to say that math is true is just not true. So, anyways, I was just thinking about a few things about the. All right, it's been about a month and a half, 2 months since the last time I used it because certain things happen that do scare me, and I'm fearful of it. And one, each time. So I just want to talk a little bit about those times that scared me and how long it took me to get over the fear before deciding to use the energy again. See, when I first found the system, I realized we could use the energy to communicate with each other because if it was all one, then that makes sense for all those times where I knew things that were going to happen before they happened in our conscious realm, right? The whole thing I was saying before about the heart being smart and knowing things before the brain does. You don't have to. The neurological system, the magic of it, the electrical system, us as individual biospecies being connected through this energy with everything around us because we all live in the true creator's energy. So I started doing more consciously what I had already been doing for years, which was communicating with whoever I could reach out to. And there were very few people that were properly using this energy for communication. As I said, there was it seemed like animals, the animals just see things for what they are. I don't even think because they don't. It's amazing. I mean, if you could put a thinking cap to have a conversation with these animals that are all around us, including our pets, it's almost like we we just make the shit up in our head. It's our own imagination to think that animals would possibly believe the same things that we do. They don't buy the propaganda. That's why they don't use the toilet. That's why they're not paying their taxes. That's why they're not, following along and, you know, taking their shots and doing the things, taking their vaccinations like they're supposed to. You have to force it on them. They're not going to go do it. If you tell your dog or cat, hey, don't forget you got to get vaccinated next week. Don't forget your appointment. They're not going to remember. They don't care. They don't want it. It's all us. So, anyways, when I started using the energy to communicate, like with Rick from Tripping Sponge, I was talking to him more about it and stuff. Which he was right on board. He was familiar with it. He knew how to use the system and understood what I meant about the the humans on the other side that are all part of the same energy. If they don't know that the messages are real, then they just think it's something biblical. They think it's something spiritual. They don't realize that it's a true energy that we all use and have this connection that we can transfer our thoughts out into what today they're trying to turn into the AI, the all-seeing eye of the internet and the computer. Well, that's easy to prove that the computer and the internet is bad, no good, fake, false, garbage, because it has zeros in it. It's 0 1 0 1 0 1. It's not just one. The true creator's energy is one, and it's all one. Everything is one with the true creator. I was trying to say this in the last video too, and I fucked it up, and I was trying to explain it, but I misexplained it. So when I started using the energy to communicate at first, then after a little while, I started thinking, maybe a year into it or whatever, and practicing with it. And I was actually, I mentioned before in earlier videos, like I lost a couple of close friends and relatives and stuff. And I was using it, like I felt my uncle when he was ready to go, when he was on the table. I knew what he was going through. I knew he was gone before I even got the phone call. I knew the day before because I seen it all. And then I was using it for about a year for communication, and there started visuals started coming into it. And I mentioned in the Candace Owens series to Candace Owens to watch out, because you're going to be tempted to be fearful at some of the things that you're going to see, because the images that I'm showing you in the clouds, the trees, the moon, all these things, you can relate them to being in the clouds. In other words, you're seeing in the clouds feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast, because that's what the builders build. Those are the images they use to build everything with. So when you see that, you're not afraid when you see the beast, because you know it's not going to jump out of the clouds at you, and you have some conscious reality of when I show it to you in the trees. You're going to be, well, first of all, most people just laugh it off anyways and say, no, yeah, dude's just seeing what he wants to see. They don't realize that I'm actually looking with truth, and looking with reality, and not just looking and seeing what I want to see. I do try to see what I want to see all the time, and that's how I prove every day. And for the last 5 years, that it's feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast. I try to put other things in there all the time, because I have both imagination and reality. So, anyways, so about a year and a half into using the True Creator system more consciously, and on a more real basis, I realized everybody could use it, and a lot of people were. They were just using it under false circumstances, and not using it properly. They were looking at it religiously rather than electrically, or electromagnetically, even to do you one better. So, so that year and a half into it, I was going and using it and starting to practice on not only communicating with, but moving around in it, not taking my carbon shell and actually moving around in it. And I got the idea from stories that I've heard during my lifetime about the monks, the ancient monks who used to go to the north and the south and poles supposedly, and travel further into them, and they made it sound more like a spiritual journey, is what they made it sound like. Now that I know that the system is electrical more than it is spiritual, even though we use spirituality to describe the electrical system for a long time, and even calling it an energy. So anyway, so I started to move around in there, and some things happened on my channel. I don't really want to get into what they were, but some things were happening on the channel, and in my conscience realm, I was meeting, and I'll describe it as an evilness, and but they were in the form of friendships and kindness in my conscious realm. But then when I went over to the other side, those same people were showing themselves as really scary beasts that I haven't been that scared, and probably since I was a little kid, about anything really. I did a lot of crazy shit when I was a kid. Fearful that they were going to take me like that, right there at the moment, just from seeing it, just from seeing the face of the image that in the conscious realm was showing me as a kind, nice person. So, so that freaked the shit out of me. So I stopped using the system for a little while, for like 8 or 9 months or so, I wasn't using it to communicate with so much. I was picking up messages, but I wasn't really sending anything back out into the system, into the true creator's energy. And so anyway, eventually did. I eventually got over my fear, and the way I got over my fear of that time there was realizing that the true creator shows me beast all the time, so there's no need for me to be afraid in there. And these other in that situation, it's actually their energy, their conscious individuality as a conscious biospecies was being used in the system. And now I could even go further with all this and tell you about a lot of other things, but they would sound melodramatic and overdramatic, even more so than what I'm telling you now. But I'm trying to make it so that people understand how easy it is, how simple it is, how we were screwed to go from the true creator's energy over I don't know how many thousands of years still, but we were tricked into it. We have a way better system all around us that we're not using, and we're being distracted and programmed by purposely by the human construct of all this, the human influence, and it's nothing to do with eventual God or a evil devil, because of the good and evil and the whole good and evil thing. There is truly a purpose for duality, but we should be conscious about it all and not just think of it as, yeah, it's in our imagination, we can feel it in our bones, and we know that God exists, but we can't prove it. We can't really prove it. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can prove there's a true creator. You want to call him God, fine. I really don't care what you call these entities or these creators. Um, that's up to you. But I'm telling you right now, we can all see it. I've been showing it to you for years, and everybody's still afraid. So on with my explanation about using the true creator's energy. So once I woke up to the idea that there was really nothing to be afraid of, and then I started realize that's when I finally started realizing, well, now if I go back and use it again, and I'm in there this time, I know I can actually move around in there. So maybe I needed to get away from it for a little while because I was just freaked myself out about it because I thought it was only going to be a matter of communication, and then by the time I got to doing the Candace Owens series, I was already mentioning to her by that time, I'm definitely more confident now about using the system. So during the Candace Owens series, I was explaining some of it, and the next part of it, the next thing that made me fearful, because I don't know what the last thing was. That's the point I'm getting to. All right, so during the Candace Owens series, I was again using the system and trying to explain it to people, and they're telling you in the scientific realm that you need to break your carbons down, and then Elon Musk can transfer your carbons to another space on this earth. And they're really confusing because they're calling it a spinning web pararocket ball, and they got you all kinds of numbers flying through your head and everything. The true creative system is much simpler than all that, and much simpler to see it for what it is, rather than closing your eyes and imagining you're fucking spinning and flying and swooping and swirling and all. It's all nonsense. They're just to fuck you up. So, anyways. So there were several things that I wanted to point out about using the energy. So we can use this energy to move around, and you don't take your carbons with you. One of the points I wanted to make was about time, because in this last video of Jordan Peterson's, they were talking a little bit about time, and then the one before that time. All right. So to use the system and go to a subconscious state is the way we'll describe it, or a spiritual or a subconscious state. It could even happen in your sleep. That's why I say the animals, they've all got it down pat. They use the system all the time. Cats take their cat naps, and they're always roaming through the subconscious realm, using the true creator's energy to travel around and communicate and all that shit. It's the animals. So humans, we're so damn smart that we distract ourselves with all these intelligent distractions, books and pictures and lies up the fucking ass, right? So we do all that. So when what I learned about going and leaving there, okay, time is all one in the true creator system. Time is all one. So as conscious species, when we go from consciousness to the subconscious and use that to travel with or to even communicate in, time does not matter. You can, once you realize how to use it, then you can go into it, and you can go to the beginning of time, you can go to the end of time. But there's no zero time and there is no infinite time. There's a one. There's one time in the true creator system. So as a conscious, take your bio consciousness with you into that realm so that you don't fuck this up. And when you go in, you can relate your conscious realm, which is all made up, a human, time itself is made by humans. The true creator and the true creator sees everything as one. So even time is as one. So when you go in there, you can decide when you want to go back to. Now this works in the most simplest ways. Tripping Sponge, Rick from the Tripping Sponge. I know very little about his dad, only what he had told me personally about his dad. And I mentioned to him in a message a while back. But I just want you to see how simple this is. So somebody that I never met, never spoke to, Rick's father. And I was receiving during one of those times when I wasn't really using the system to communicate, I was receiving messages and kept seeing and smelling and hearing when I was going into that subconscious realm from Rick's father. Nothing major was going on. I tried to use my consciousness when I um, uh, am back in a conscious state. Then I tried to relate. So well, maybe something's wrong and I just wasn't catching it. Next time I go in, I will see if I can catch something else. Maybe he's sick. Maybe something bad happened or something, and I'm just not seeing it. I'm missing it because I'm avoiding any communication in the system. Right. So so it could be over the smallest things, and I don't know what the real answer is because when I messaged Rick, I never went and seen what he messaged me back. I just said I kind of felt your dad. How's he doing? Hope everything's okay or something. I said I didn't even say how's he doing. I just said hope everything's okay. So something still might be there, but I just want to point out how it doesn't have to be over major things. You don't have to use the system for these major events. It could just be simple communication. In other words, major events like when my uncle was passing or cousin was passing, and they came and told me they were leaving, and it was violent. For at least one of them, for my uncle, it was a violent last few minutes of him going, and time doesn't matter. So if he died yesterday and I got the message an hour after the time the doctors lost him or whatever, I can look back in time and I'll say, oh, I was feeling that, but I wasn't open to the message. And my heart dropped and I was crying and I didn't know why. And I wasn't really open to the messages because that often happens as well. Used to happen all the time, but now that I know the system, it happens less. But we all have this. This is nothing special about me. This is, where am I going with this camera? This is nothing special about me. And how do I know that? Because we've heard over the years, you know, fuck the people who've seen spaceships and all that shit. That's all garbage. Even the people that say they're seeing angels and gods and all, there's all kinds of explanations for those things. What I'm showing you here is realistic. So when I'm telling you to look for feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast over and over and over again from the veil to the ground, all sizes, all directions, okay, that's literal. It's not a metaphor, it's literal. So yes, it might seem a little bit strange to do, but when you go and do it, you're going to realize that all of the little bit of truths that were passed down to us through all the lies, we were on top of some of them. We were on top of some of them, incidentally, coincidentally, I don't know. And it seems like they had to work pretty damn hard for a couple thousand years, which is a long time, if that's the true time. And it seems like it is. It seems like it's like at least 2 to 6,000 years minimum. They worked really hard to make sure that all life that humans lived by was done under imaginary terms, you know? And it just got worse and worse and worse. And we knew that it was going to get worse and worse because they told us in their books and their bullshit stories. They told us it just didn't make any sense. You know, how you going to make sense out of a bunch of fucking twisted lies that they don't just come out and show it to you and say, here's the reality, you know, here's where we live, here's what it is. Nah, man. You think they're going to come out and tell you that they lied about fucking outer space? You know how this their game is going to crumble so badly when everybody wakes up to that. So therefore, every space alien wannabe out there, everybody that believes in the sci-fi nonsense, everybody who, for that matter, went to school, right? When you think about it, anybody who has a proper education, they're going to be so against what I'm showing you. It goes against everything. The geocentric model gone, the heliocentric model gone. So I do offer that there's little bits and pieces of truth of all of them that you can use to prove your points, but unfortunately it breaks down the rest of all the everything else we were ever shown, told, thought, programmed. um, but that's okay, man. Don't fucking worry about it. It's much better. The true creator's energy is much better than Google. I assure you. I assure you. Look how intelligent our species was getting just by not having the internet, right? Brains were able to remember thousands of phone numbers, at a time. Weak little brains like ours were able to memorize all the phone numbers. Not anymore. Not anymore. Just a couple decades, and we lose our human memory chip, our brain. All of a sudden, we don't know anybody's phone number. We got to go to the phone for it. We used to memorize all kinds of false information, really well. But then, of course, the internet comes along. Now we don't even know what the fuck state to state, city to city. Not me. I mean, I've always been ignorant to these things. But majority of people, you ask them, what state was next to this state and how things work and stuff. A good portion of the people would know that. Now they don't. They just go straight to the fucking, even your own heliocentric model that they believe so much in. They got to look up every time I get in an argument about something to do with how fast we're spinning or the sun doing this and centripetal and centrifugal force and all the whatever bullshit it is. And they always run to Google. It's amazing. And I'm always off by like a couple points here, a couple points there, because I don't have a really good memory. But I do have a good instinct for bullshit stories. So when I'm calling out their bullshit stories, then then they get upset. What am I at for minutes here? Let's see. 30 something minutes. Right there for a minute. So I wanted to point out the few times, because it's only been about, 4 years as far as using the system more. But we always knew it was there. You'd hear about some sister in Florida cutting her finger, and her brother that lives in Massachusetts on that same day had to go to the doctors because his finger was acting up. It was painful, and then finds out his sister almost lost her finger, and it was hanging by a thread. Doctors sewed it back on, and next thing you know, he's going through the next. Time might go by before he even knows about it, depending on how close he is consciously in his conscious realm. Maybe he's distanced himself. Maybe one's a liberal douche and the other one's a conservative fucking genius. But either way, you look at cases like that, and then the person says, "Oh, that is weird. I mean, I've got the documents to prove it. I went to the doctor's on that day, and I was it kept going back to the ER for the next 2 weeks and everything. My fingers were killing me, and especially this one, and they're telling their story. And there's a lot of stories like that, that when it even happens with connections that are not blood related, just as far as people that share close ties and love, couples and relationships. And you'll see things like that happen. Someone goes away it's almost just like you can use it on a smaller scale rather than a pain thing that way, and say you always know when someone's not being faithful to you, right? So you always know it. You know when you're deep down in your soul, you'll call it. Even if you have no evidence, you still know it. But then you use lies and bullshit stories in order to bypass the mirror neuron because you don't want to feel the pain. And your subconscious, you know that it's happening that way, but you're never going to admit it to yourself. You're going to say, "Oh, I'm just jealous because I'm a jealous person." Um, I just watched that movie last night, Fatal Attraction, so it's probably just me and my mind spinning. And sometimes it is, but but if you sit back and you pay attention to your own true self, then you'll know the answer. You just may deny it and lie to yourself because that's what we all been trained to do. We all know Santa Claus wasn't real. We all know that. Again, I'm not supposed to step on any religions, but we all know a lot of these religions. I won't name names, but we know that they're bullshit. The stories make no fucking sense. Even in our even in the subconscious realm, we still also know that these things were false. You have to watch a lot of movies, you have to read a lot of books to be that intelligent, to believe a bunch of the shit that we all believe in, because we like to live by our imaginations nowadays. Bypassing that mirror neuron. Yep, the mirror neuron manipulator is the most important thing we got going, and science don't even look at it. It's the second most important thing, because I would say the first most important thing is the Metellus, because the Metellus is killing everybody in so many different ways, and they won't even admit it. They won't even look at it and with open eyes. Science, medicine, they won't look at it for that reason, because they know, if everyone sees the Metellus for what it is, from the electrodes and the nanos, and I'm going to start calling them nanolists because they're smaller. They got to be smaller than nanos because they're building nano species. So if they're building nano species, then they must be smaller than nanoparticles in order to do so. So they're going to be called nanolist metellus, electrometellus, and and then we'll get up to the hybrid metellus and biometellus, which I am going to try to talk a little bit about in this series a little bit later, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait to get through the space race nonsense, because I'm looking forward to getting through the outer space bullshit stories with Jordan Peterson series. Jordan, you use the True Creators system all the time. It seems to me. You really do. You seem to be using it on a fairly regular basis. It's just that you're definitely not using it to its full capacity, and I think you should, because if you're going to count on it for your intelligence, which you can, but you can't attribute the intelligence that you're going to receive from the true creator's work and seeing it. You can definitely cannot attribute that to the brain, to the human brain. The human brain is only soaking up what it learns from its environment. It's just a memory capsule, and I don't mean to say just, because that's important, but it's part of the huge plot against the human population, for sure. Against all populations, but against the human populations doing it to themselves. I mean, yes, we fuck all the animals. The feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast are all getting fucked by us. All the other creatures, believe it or not, feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast being the only ones that were replicated and then duplicated by the false creator/creator. They're the only species. So that means there has to be a reason why we don't see all of the other species we see in our conscious realm. Why don't we see them in the true creator's work? Why we know that the true creator's builders are building them because we can see them in our conscious realm. But when you look into their fur, when you look into their skin, when you look into these creatures, they're still showing us that they're being built with feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast. Just like every body of water, just like every ice cube, just like the moon, just like the clouds, just like the trees, just like every fucking thing. Everything in here is built by the true creator's builders. So they're building using these feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast images of faces only. So we know that the human body, what we know as the torso and the limbs, comes from the work of the true creator, and I'm sorry, the false creator and the /creator. Because they divided themselves from the true creator's energy and kept dividing and dividing and dividing until they um, until I kind of lose it at a certain point because, again, because of all the lies. But I stay calm about it and I will figure it out eventually. Um, what I'm talking about is the idea that we were at one time synthetic. I think we're going to find answers for that fairly easy once other people come aboard, because there are a lot of people out there, thousands by the thousands, who do realize that we've been the biospecies. Humans are responsible for it. That's the only thing. The people that are out there talking about it, like Harold Kotz, he wants to give the credit to space aliens, unfortunately, or to aliens, and I'm not ready to do that yet. But I am willing to admit that there were most likely we were synthetic species before bio, and I'm pretty sure we came from that synthetic species. And there's a lot of evidence that you're all ignoring right here in the heavy metals and minerals they're dropping on our heads every day that I'm showing you that you all deny, and no one will go look at. But anyways, there alone you can see the evidence that they're dumping us synthetics in addition to all these other heavy metals and minerals. There are synthetic heavy metals and minerals in there, not heavy metals, but I mean synthetic minerals. Um, and then we drink out of plastic bottles and we eat a lot of plastics and all this kind of shit, and we cook things in the microwave on plastic and we melt down plastic. So we're surrounded by synthetics that we're taking into our biosystem. But if they are turning us back to a synthetic species, they sure are doing it very slowly. They're going about it really slow. They're still putting heavy metals into our bodies as braces, bolts, when they bolt us back together. They're started going over to a carbon fiber. You know, you can get if something happens to a guy in war, they may not use a metal or something metallic to use around his brain. Nowadays, they might use one of these synthetic carbons. Um, Something like that along those lines. You know, even bone replacements and stuff. They went from more metal to synthetic. So they are getting us to more and more synthetic species. Um, what's this thing at for minutes? 42 minutes, I think, already. So, anyways, I rambled off. I guess what I was saying about about using the system is just a point that I was thinking about and wanted to just point it out so that there's no fear of it. And I want to make it seem as easy as possible. So when I talk, you're not going to hear melodramatic shit coming out of my mouth, because I don't want people to think it's complicated, because it's not. And you know, we were always told over these years that you had to be some deep ancient monk in order to be able to use the system. Oh, that's what I wanted to say before this ends about the time. Because time is wall one there, you can go in a seconds. You can go seconds, and Jordan Peterson had somebody on that he was talking to. I'll try to find this video, and I'll probably repeat myself again when I find it. All right, so the guy was talking about death, and a lot of people were actually. He did a series on it or something about people who died and came back, and all these things and the things that they saw and everything. Now, a lot of those things can be explained away, in my opinion, with the endorphins that fly through the body uh, when we're dying and all these different things. But there is a energy and a spirituality, you want to call it, that's fine. But that energy should be taken into account and consideration when all that stuff is happening, of coming and going, because it's obvious now to me that that's the way it works. That those are the builders that I'm showing you, the triangular shapes that are all around us, building everything. These energies, that's us. When our bioshell falls and hits the ground, we go back to that energy, right? And if you take the bioshell and bury it underground and bomb it and bury it 6 feet under, you're not giving yourself a chance to come right back. You have yourself come back. Your energy can come back in another shell, no doubt about it. But if you don't put your carbons back into the atmosphere, then you're not doing ourselves any favor when we do that. I wanted to mention that. Um, in the time thing, they were saying the same thing when they were talking about leaving and coming back. They seen their whole life flash by them in seconds, right? And they try to make that sound as literal as possible, and trying to get it through to people how true that is, that statement. They're not just seeing little flashes of their life go by. They're not little multi-second flashes. No, because time does not exist there. It does exist, but it's all one. So on the other side, time is all one. So therefore, when you're here in the conscious realm, walking around in our conscious bio shells, we think as time is one,